As Chancellor of the University, I declare this congregation open for the conferring of degrees by the authority of the Senate.
Mr. Chancellor, my Lord Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me as the Vice-Chancellor of Leicester University to welcome all of you in this hall this afternoon to this degree congregation. To those of you about to receive your degrees, I add to my welcome my congratulations on your achievements. This is a time to celebrate your achievements and to do so in the presence of so many friends and members of family. And I welcome all the guests who've come to be witness and part of this celebration, particularly those who've travelled, as many of you have, I know, great distances. Those of you who've been studying here in the University of Leicester for the last few years will be taking degrees of an institution which had its origin in 1921. It was created then as a university college, mainly as a result of a campaign by a number of prominent local Leicester citizens who felt that it was high time that Leicester had an institution of higher education. And in part they were stimulated to do so, to create this opportunity for young people as a memorial to many young people who had been killed, particularly young men, of course, in the 1914-18 war. At first that institution, being a university college, awarded degrees of the University of London. But in 1957, it was granted by Royal Charter the status of a full, independent, autonomous university. It has, of course, grown considerably over that time. In 1921, the first intake consisted only of 9 students, all female, as a matter of interest. By the end of the 1939-45 war, the number had grown up to a massive 90. By the time it got its charter and became a fully independent university, there were 900 students on the campus. Now we have approaching 9,000 on the campus, and a total on the register of about 15,000, including a large number of students doing courses by distance education. In fact, now more than half our registered students in that total number are registered for postgraduate degrees. At this congregation, as at all our congregations, those of you who studied in the university and will be graduating are joined by an individual, or in some cases several, whose distinguished achievements in their lives and careers are being recognized by the university. And this afternoon we will be granting an honorary degree to Professor Dame Gillian Beer, about whom the public orator will be speaking in a few moments. The ceremonial of this occasion, with its robes and its rituals, gives a sense of continuity with so many such ceremonies occurring in other places, not only in Britain at around about this time, but throughout the world. And not only worldwide, but also tracing the origins of present-day universities back to their medieval precursors. Universities like Bologna and Sorbonne in Paris and Oxford, going back several hundred years. This gives a sense of becoming a member of a community of scholarship, which you will do by virtue of this graduation this afternoon. The order of the ceremony is that, first of all, there's the award of the honorary degree to Professor Beer, as I say, introduced by the public orator, then the awards to those of you who've been students in the University of Leicester on whatever courses you've been doing, whether for teaching or research. And then finally, the Chancellor will address the congregation. This is a time for celebration, and I hope all of you, graduands and our guests, will enjoy the occasion as part of that celebration. Thank you.
This is not the first time we have welcomed Gillian Beer to this university. The organisers of our major conferences, mounted by our Victorian Studies Centre, would always have her name at the top of their list, and would have had her name begun with a Z, and her acceptance and her appearance were always greeted with a sigh of relief. The feeling was that no matter what could go wrong, as long as Gillian Beer was there would be a high spot of authority, articulacy, and originality. Moreover, she had something interesting to say, no matter what the theme, from steam engines to Darwin, from travel to George Eliot. Her early life had a distinctly Thomas Hardy ring about it. Born in the middle of a heath in Surrey, and I wonder, did they call her birthplace Little Bookham later, or was it that already? She moved subsequently to a bricklayer's home in Somerset. Here, she cycled, she avoided going off with the gypsies, what a chapter that would have made, until dispatched to a small boarding school. This she enjoyed, particularly the drama, but so much for the national curriculum. Her real interest in literature seems to have started when an accident caused her to have a year away from school, for that is when she began to read seriously and to write. And from then on, it all sounds much more straightforward than I'm sure it was. We find her at St Anne's, Oxford, getting a first in English and having no doubt about what her career was going to be. She followed her first degree with the B. Lit, and after teaching jobs at Bedford College London and Liverpool, homed in on Cambridge, where her reputation and her career have gone from strength to strength. Her fellowship at Girton, her lectureship led to a readership in literature, in narrative, and then to a chair in English, making a significant crack in that glass ceiling. In 1994, she became the president of Clare Hall and was appointed to the King Edward VII Professorship of English Literature. This latter being a royal appointment, she avoided the awkwardness of an interview or even of applying in the first place. Somebody, somewhere, thought that she'd done enough already. Whilst our graduates' training and sensitivities are in the field of literature, her significant contribution has been to see very clearly the relationship between her beloved literary narratives and many other fields of human endeavour. At the heart of this is the relationship between science and literature. And there is a certain irony in her early and groundbreaking work on Darwin and the concept of the missing link. Her thesis was that Victorian scientists, to a large extent, had to write and indeed had to think in a mainly literary language, as there was no scientific equivalent. At the same time, Darwin's thesis about evolution had a dramatic effect upon Victorian narrative and consciousness, more so than is evident to the casual and at times not so casual reader. And at the heart of this is the missing link, the link between the two chains. The irony is that, in so doing, Gillian Beer provided a missing link, indeed, became the found one herself in bridging the gap between the two domains of literary and scientific scholarship. And her work has attracted not only the praise of literary scholars, but of scientists, historians, philosophers, and anthropologists. Whilst she teases herself and us with the notion that the relentless hunt for this missing link was conducted half in the hope that it would never be found, because our forebears did not want it to exist, there's no doubt that we are delighted to have found her, not only as the apparent mistress of all trades for our conferences and to guide our scholarship in so many ways, but to honour our ceremony today. Her interest in this field, the link between the worlds of the arts and of science, has continued, and one is as likely to find her at a conference at the Wellcome Trust, looking at, for example, the relationship between design technology and some branches of medicine, as at Clare Hall. No mathematical or modern scientist herself, nonetheless, she professes a real interest in the ideas generated by scientists, particularly those they have difficulty in controlling. In this, she no doubt recalls the words of Darwin himself: "The highest possible stage in our culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts." Our graduand has developed a significant and imposing publications list. Major books have appeared on Meredith, on the Romance, George Eliot, and Virginia Woolf, amongst others. And her editorial work has made accessible and has elucidated the novels of those writers, as well as Jane Austen. Her essays display, as well as far-reaching scholarship, a gift for a good title. Who could resist Square Rounds and Other Awkward Fits, Chemistry as Theatre, or The Island and the Aeroplane, The Case of Virginia Woolf, or The Reader's Wager, Lots, Sorts, and Futures. So tempting to find out what Gillian Beer has to say, and so worthwhile and illuminating when one has fallen into her snare. But our graduand not only writes a lot, she's read a lot. As well as being chair of the Poetry Book Society, she has been Booker Prize judge and occupied the hot seat. In more ways than one, the TV cameras and lights watch you having supper, as chair of the Booker panel of judges in 1997. This entailed reading well over 100 novels in a very short space of time, and they can't all be enthralling. You will recall Evelyn Waugh's Lady Peabury reading a novel in the morning room and enjoying this. Early training gave a spice to this recreation, for she had been brought up to believe that to read a novel before luncheon was one of the gravest sins it was possible for a gentlewoman to commit. It is evident that Gillian Beer finds spice and space for this occupation, morning, afternoon, and evening. And maybe we should be renaming that Surrey village Much Bookham, or Bookham Major. Oliver Goldsmith was of the view that as writers become more numerous, it is natural for readers to become more indolent, and he plainly hadn't met Gillian Beer, for her level of activity defies the short span of time at an orator's disposal. She has held with diligence and distinction a range of important administrative responsibilities in her own university. She has undertaken public duties in this country without hesitation, as a trustee of the Cambridge Foundation, as Vice President of the British Academy, and as a trustee of the British Museum, amongst others. And she has not only lectured and taught nationally and internationally around the world, from North America to Japan, but has enjoyed herself singing around the world too, as well as keeping an eye on the visual art in Kettle's Yard. Others have found her advice sound as a member of the editorial boards of many journals. And last, but far from least, has been the success of the Cambridge series, Studies in 19th Century Literature and Culture, of which she is the general editor, and which already shows 18 volumes, with another 3 years' work to come. Alice protested to the March Hare, and Lewis Carroll has not avoided our graduand's keen gaze, that meaning what you say is the same as saying what you mean. And this is what Dame Gillian has done in her robust defences of higher education, as a place where one can think against the grain, and, as all societies need, produce those who are willing to set off at a tangent from received assumptions. And she has led by example. She became a Dame Commander of the British Empire in 1998, and we are delighted to honour her today. In so doing, may we revert to that period which she has made so much her own, and remembering Mr. Bagnet in Bleak House, describe her as the colour sergeant of the non-pareil battalion. Mr. Chancellor, on the recommendation of the Senate and the Council, I present Gillian Patricia Kempster Beer, that you may confer upon her the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters.
Madam, I bid you the degree of Doctor of Letters. We welcome you among us. Congratulations.
It is an honour indeed to receive a Lit D from a university like Leicester, so distinguished for its tradition of 19th century studies. It's an honour and a pleasure too to receive it alongside all of you who have worked so hard to receive your substantive degrees. The very first conference I ever went to as a young assistant lecturer was at the University of Leicester. And there, at the age of 24, I met a PhD student who became a lifelong friend and is now Professor of English at Birkbeck College, University of London, Isabel Armstrong. There too, I first encountered Professor Philip Collins. And Philip Collins, I would like to speak of a little because he has been so important to all of us who do the work that we now call interdisciplinary studies. His work indeed has been exemplary. His books on Dickens and crime, Dickens and education, combine empirical evidence with speculative insight to evoke what it was like to be alive in London in the Victorian period, depending on what class you were and who your parents were and what your conditions of life might be. That is, he recognized variety. We wish him today a very speedy recovery from a recent fall, and I'm glad to say that he is now home from hospital. Scholarship, I think, can give us all that sense of other lives, other opportunities. It allows us to inhabit times and places we couldn't otherwise visit. And in that way, our understanding is increased now. An understanding not only of the common concerns of being human, but of difference. How different are the preoccupations and self-understandings of different communities, that we should respect that too. And language, through which I work, through which we all in this room work, can give us entry to the inner experience of far-off lives, past lives, in a way that no other medium so directly can. All of us here present share for our uses the English language, with its resourcefulness in accepting new vocabularies, its emergence in other parts of the world as an indigenous tongue, capable of expressing experiences gathered there. And English is local. English is local in many places, and it is not always obliged to be the same kind of English. It's wonderfully malleable. It can answer to different needs. I think we are fortunate to live in a language that, for reasons good and ill, is written and spoken creatively in very diverse groups across the world. The novel about which I think and write and read a good deal is certainly thriving as a result. Fiction, after all, is a form of experimentation. It lets us try out, test possibilities without having to live the immediate consequences, which is just as well when you think of some of the things that happen in fiction. And certainly one of the things I learnt from chairing the Booker Prize and reading that 120-odd novels over one summer is that the disturbances and the desires and the alarms of communities manifest themselves fully across the fictions they produce. And fictions, of course, draw on wider experience than those held within books. I've been led over the last decade or so to spend a good deal of time thinking about writing that's not traditionally held to be literature at all. In particular, as your orator has remarked, the writing of scientists such as Charles Darwin. And what emerges, I think, as soon as one starts to think about this, is the degree to which scientists draw creatively on the resources of our common culture for their metaphors to think with. Darwin, I think, is indeed one kind of model for us all in universities and in our lives afterwards. Whatever he saw excited his curiosity. He thought, and this I think is probably unusual, that skepticism was a good shortcut, but that it tended to make us leave out possibilities that went against the grain of orthodox opinion. So, for instance, he had his son play the, I think it was the tuba, to climbing plants to see whether it made them turn one way or the other way. When he had children, he loved them and he observed them. He kept a diary of his daughter's first year of development, which is still referred to by psychologists now. He worked with extraordinary concentration and stamina despite illness, but he also took time off to walk, to read novels, to talk with his wife and his friends. And of course, he was lucky. He managed to avoid committees. In this room, we have people who have been working in the arts and in continuing education, continuing learning. And I think that the ranging life that people of the past have lived reminds us that learning certainly doesn't either begin or end when you arrive at university or when you leave it. It continues. And to all those of you who today graduate from Leicester, I give my best wishes for a future enriched by what you have discovered here. Thank you.
The graduands in the Faculty of Arts will be presented by the Dean, Professor Pearce. Will all graduands in the faculty please stand?
Mr. Chancellor, I ask you to admit these candidates from the Faculty of Arts to the several degrees for which they are presented.
Graduates of the Faculty of Arts, by the authority of the Senate, I admit you to the several degrees which you are presented.
For the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, Christine Bainton. Christine Baker. Catherine Bates. Jane Dowson. Christine Garwood. Gillian Hugman Perkins. Andrew Lacey. Frederick Page. Kate Parkin. Sam Riches. David Salter. Christine Viles. David Wilson. For the degree of Master of Philosophy, Nicholas Stott.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Master of Arts in English Local History, Patricia Buckham.
Congratulations.
David Fox.
Congratulations.
June Gilbert.
Congratulations.
Deborah Lofas.
Congratulations.
Patricia O'Flanagan.
Congratulations.
Hayden Rainsford.
Well done.
John Rowley.
Congratulations.
Raymond Selden.
Congratulations.
Sharon Toone.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Master of Arts in Historical Studies, William Bellis.
Congratulations. Well done.
Karen Carter.
Congratulations.
Richard Coleman.
Well done.
Margaret Forrest.
Congratulations. Well done.
Paul Geldart.
Congratulations.
Philip Hart.
Congratulations.
Helen Monk.
Congratulations.
Avril Morris.
Congratulations.
Colin Ray.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Master of Arts in Museum Studies, Rachel Bairstow.
Congratulations.
Mindy Borman.
Congratulations.
Deirdre Buckley.
Congratulations.
Sarah Curtis.
Congratulations.
Gareth Davis.
Congratulations.
Jane Davis.
Congratulations.
Annette French.
Congratulations.
Zelina Garland.
Congratulations.
Andrea Gellert.
Congratulations.
Bryony Hudson.
Congratulations.
Labras Joy.
Congratulations.
Despina Kellysopoulou.
Congratulations.
Georgina Caravatiu.
Congratulations.
Mark Lorry.
Well done.
Per Helga Nylund.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Cassandra O'Connell.
Congratulations.
Judy Omarpas.
Congratulations.
Lynn Podmore.
Congratulations.
Lucinda Porton.
Congratulations.
Sarah Sawkins.
Congratulations.
Ruth Shuttleworth.
Congratulations.
Irene Truly.
Congratulations.
Carmel Walsh.
Congratulations.
Yu Hui Wang.
Congratulations.
Helen Watson.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in American Studies, Guy Allen.
Congratulations.
Louise Arnold.
Congratulations.
Chris Dutton.
Congratulations.
Peter Holland.
Congratulations.
Nicholas Holt.
Congratulations.
Catherine Johnson.
Congratulations.
Joanne Kent.
Congratulations.
Richard Napier.
Congratulations.
Ryan Norman.
Congratulations.
James Partridge.
Congratulations.
Jessica Summerfield.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in American Studies with a year in the United States of America, James Blagg.
Congratulations.
James Fleming.
Well done.
David McCarthy.
Congratulations.
Francesca Smith.
Congratulations.
Holly Wheeler.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Combined Studies, Louisa Askew.
Congratulations.
Claire Atkinson.
Congratulations.
Chanda Bali.
Congratulations.
Helen Bigar.
Congratulations.
Louise Bond.
Congratulations.
Benjamin Bowden.
Congratulations.
John Brindle.
Congratulations.
Stephen Candelaria.
Congratulations.
Hannah Cassidy.
Congratulations.
Garbar Juhan.
Congratulations.
Carolyn Cook.
Congratulations.
Sheila Daly.
Congratulations.
Margaret Davis.
Congratulations.
Emily Davis.
Congratulations.
Ewan Davidson.
Congratulations.
Kate Derbyshire.
Congratulations.
Joanne Duffy.
Congratulations.
Laura Dyer.
Congratulations.
Catherine Elmer.
Congratulations.
Christopher Elsey.
Congratulations.
Alexandra Emery.
Congratulations.
Laura Empey.
Congratulations.
Naomi Flanagan.
Congratulations.
Emma Girling.
Congratulations.
Justine Goadby.
Well done.
Sarah Gom.
Congratulations.
Catherine Green.
Congratulations.
Miranda Griffith.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Grundle.
Congratulations.
Philip Holman.
Congratulations.
Laura Hope.
Congratulations.
Donna Horton.
Congratulations.
Thomas Hunt.
Congratulations.
Rebecca Hersey.
Congratulations.
Ruth Johnston.
Congratulations.
Vivian Jones.
Congratulations.
Brenda Jordan.
Congratulations.
Catherine Lees.
Congratulations.
Grace Lowe.
Congratulations.
Ruth Marshall.
Congratulations.
Andrew Maxwell.
Congratulations.
Andrew Mills.
Congratulations.
Jonathan Mitchell.
Congratulations.
Imrama Naz.
Congratulations.
Kevin Nichols.
Congratulations.
Siobhan O'Donoghue.
Congratulations.
Jane Oughton.
Congratulations.
Sarah Pass.
Congratulations.
Tina Patel.
Congratulations.
Robert Poynton.
Congratulations.
Catherine Preston.
Congratulations.
Annette Price.
Congratulations.
Megan Rhodes.
Congratulations.
Alan Roach.
Congratulations.
Catherine Rodway.
Congratulations.
Jennifer Saunderson.
Congratulations.
Rosalind Southwood.
Congratulations.
Lorna Spencer.
Congratulations.
Claire Stringer.
Congratulations.
Lindsay Taylor.
Congratulations.
Gillian Waite.
Congratulations.
Rebecca Weston.
Congratulations.
Andrew Wilson.
Congratulations.
June Wilson.
Congratulations.
Lillian Schwartz.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Combined Studies, University College, Northampton, John Goodyear.
Congratulations. Well done.
Taslim Halling.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in English, Rachel Ambus.
Congratulations.
Jane Archer.
Congratulations.
Claire Ashurst.
Congratulations.
Andrew Ayrton.
Congratulations.
Catherine Baldry.
Congratulations.
Erica Bennett.
Congratulations.
Alex Beresford.
Congratulations.
Laura Birchall.
Congratulations.
Jonathan Black.
Congratulations.
Heidi Broadfield.
Congratulations.
Stephanie Brooks.
Congratulations.
Gabrielle Brown.
Congratulations.
Catherine Burke.
Congratulations.
Hannah Chapman.
Congratulations.
Claire Clark.
Congratulations.
Helen Cross.
Congratulations.
Anna Cunningham.
Congratulations.
Nicola Dimitriou.
Congratulations.
Chris Ding.
Congratulations.
Rachel Evans.
Congratulations.
Charlotte Eubank.
Congratulations.
Vanessa Galloway.
Congratulations.
Tibber Gill.
Congratulations.
Ruth Gooder.
Congratulations.
Hannah Green.
Congratulations.
Thomas Hawkins.
Well done.
Catherine Hayden.
Congratulations.
Karen Heath.
Congratulations.
Stephanie Howell.
Congratulations.
Vanessa Hunt.
Congratulations.
Edward Jack.
Congratulations.
Jonathan James.
Congratulations.
Tracy Jennings.
Congratulations.
Morn Johnson.
Congratulations.
Rachel Kittermaster.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Krieger.
Congratulations.
Leo Lonergan.
Congratulations.
Felicity Marshall.
Congratulations.
Matthew Morn.
Congratulations.
Gavin Middleton.
Congratulations.
Laura Mills.
Congratulations.
Suzanne Mills.
Congratulations.
Claire Morrison.
Congratulations.
Christopher Moxon.
Congratulations.
Stuart Mulligan.
Congratulations.
Hannah Munns.
Congratulations.
Carla Napoleon.
Congratulations.
Stephanie Newby.
Congratulations.
Kelsey Norcott.
Congratulations.
Morgan Noyes.
Congratulations.
Jane Opoku.
Congratulations.
John Osborne.
Congratulations.
Mary Papagianni.
Congratulations.
Kathleen Parker.
Congratulations.
Gemma Perkins.
Congratulations.
Jill Poole.
Congratulations.
Nicola Price.
Congratulations.
Edward Ralston.
Congratulations.
Alistair Rogers.
Congratulations.
Fleur Robury.
Congratulations.
Mark Sapstead.
Congratulations.
Lisa Scott.
Congratulations.
Robin Shakespeare.
Congratulations.
Hannah Skelton.
Congratulations.
Joseph Slade.
Congratulations.
Craig Start.
Congratulations.
Felicity Taylor.
Congratulations.
Catherine Taylor Gooby.
Congratulations.
Mary Tranter.
Congratulations.
Julie Usher.
Congratulations.
Enid Walters.
Congratulations, well done.
Paula Warrington.
Congratulations.
Emily Webb.
Congratulations.
Stephanie White.
Congratulations.
Naomi Wilkinson.
Congratulations.
Jennifer Williams.
Congratulations, well done.
Matthew Worrell.
Congratulations, well done.
Elizabeth Young.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in English, European Union, Judy Barber.
Congratulations.
Rebecca Clark.
Congratulations.
Carl Gomez.
Congratulations.
Emma Kirk.
Congratulations.
Alison McKnight.
Congratulations.
Jessica Ney.
Congratulations.
Luke O'Hanlon.
Well done.
Matthew Skinner.
Congratulations.
Nemini Warner.
Congratulations.
Laura Woodland.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in French, Paul Beckley.
Congratulations.
Gemma Gascoigne.
Congratulations.
Jane Hamilton.
Congratulations.
Laura McCullough.
Congratulations.
Leon Mincher.
Congratulations.
Anne Parkin.
Congratulations.
Lisa Robinson.
Congratulations.
James Sherwin.
Congratulations.
Louise Steele.
Congratulations.
Julian Wilson.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in French and German, Andrew Draper.
Congratulations.
Lindsay Dutton.
Congratulations.
Caroline Harper.
Congratulations.
Caroline Hurrell.
Congratulations.
Luke Morby.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Saint.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in French and Italian, Helen Binns.
Congratulations.
Neofita Karalambous.
Congratulations.
Tana Chiulo.
Congratulations.
Sean Davis.
Congratulations.
Hayley Dowsing.
Congratulations.
Eleanor Feather.
Congratulations.
Rachel Grimley.
Congratulations.
Richard Hall.
Well done.
Joanna Hudd.
Congratulations. Well done.
Emma Hughes.
Congratulations.
Rebecca Lemon.
Congratulations.
Emma Lovett.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Perfoyty.
Congratulations.
Stacey Teo.
Congratulations.
Georgina Turner.
Congratulations.
Amy Wells.
Congratulations.
Ellen White.
Congratulations.
Alison Whiting.
Congratulations.
Joanna Wiles.
Congratulations.
Angela Woodcock.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in French and Politics, Emma Binns.
Congratulations.
Josephine Brown.
Congratulations.
Angela Easton.
Congratulations.
David Jackson.
Congratulations.
Aaron Melly.
Congratulations.
Matthew Nash.
Congratulations.
Annalisa Tinsley.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in German, Tracy Gray.
Congratulations.
Lisa Harding.
Congratulations.
Michael MacDonald.
Well done.
Deborah Sharp.
Congratulations.
Ian Teagle.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in German and Italian, Katrina Hammerstein.
Congratulations.
Laura Woodhill.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History, Joanne Bailey.
Congratulations.
Kate Bamber.
Congratulations.
Ben Beggin.
Congratulations.
Laura Billings.
Congratulations.
Anna Blakeman.
Congratulations.
Claire Botting.
Congratulations.
Sophie Brannan.
Congratulations.
Gareth Butcher.
Congratulations.
John Cahill.
Congratulations.
David Kahn.
Congratulations.
Christopher Cashman.
Congratulations.
Philip Cox.
Congratulations.
Kelly Collett.
Congratulations.
Paula Collett.
Congratulations.
Ben Crossley.
Congratulations.
Matthew Davis.
Congratulations.
Hugh Dixon.
Well done.
Kieran Dowling.
Congratulations.
Victoria Edwards.
Congratulations.
Matthew Field.
Congratulations.
Paul Garrad.
Congratulations.
Suzanne Green.
Congratulations.
David Hartley.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Henton.
Congratulations.
Gillian Hunter.
Congratulations.
Alison Jones.
Congratulations.
David Jewson.
Congratulations.
Natalie Langford.
Congratulations.
John Levac.
Congratulations.
Angela Lund.
Congratulations.
Christopher McLean.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Murphy.
Congratulations.
James Pender.
Congratulations.
Lee Quain.
Congratulations.
Caroline Richards.
Congratulations.
John Richardson.
Congratulations.
Victoria Robson.
Congratulations.
Lindsay Ruddle.
Congratulations.
Rebecca Sharp.
Congratulations.
Lucy Sparrow.
Congratulations.
Caroline Summers.
Congratulations.
Stephen Taylor.
Congratulations.
David Usher.
Well done.
Jonathan Ward.
Congratulations.
Catherine Wesley.
Congratulations.
Alexander West.
Congratulations.
Kirsty Whitehead.
Congratulations.
Catherine Wild.
Congratulations.
Karen Yan.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History, European Union, Victoria Benja.
Congratulations.
Roland Colbeck-Meenan.
Congratulations.
Sarah Emerton.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History and Archaeology, Catherine Barnes.
Congratulations.
John Cran.
Congratulations.
Serena Joanna Crisan.
Congratulations.
Georgina Doody.
Congratulations.
Andrew Hurst.
Congratulations.
Juliet Keenor.
Congratulations.
James Kitely.
Congratulations.
Declan McLaughlin.
Congratulations.
Ian Meldon.
Congratulations.
Julia Robertson.
Congratulations.
Ronwen Saunders.
Congratulations.
Rachel Sayers,
Congratulations.
Nicola Watts,
Congratulations.
Victoria West.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History and Archaeology, European Union, Sarah Tatum.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History and Politics, Christopher Bartley.
Congratulations.
Gaynor Benson.
Congratulations.
Tom Caleb.
Congratulations.
Mark Chambers.
Congratulations.
Jeremy Davis.
Congratulations.
Claire Ely.
Congratulations.
Stuart Fryer.
Congratulations.
Guy Ho.
Congratulations.
Jonathan Howes.
Congratulations.
Alex Ilersic.
Congratulations.
Alan Jeremiah.
Congratulations.
Elena Johnston.
Congratulations.
Russell Kinch.
Congratulations.
Andrew Lee.
Congratulations.
Stuart McAlpin.
Congratulations.
Ruth Morris.
Congratulations.
Patrick Murray.
Congratulations.
Andrew Nitek.
Congratulations.
Christopher Poutney.
Congratulations.
Owen Pybus.
Congratulations.
James Rice.
Congratulations.
Michaela Roberts.
Congratulations.
Carol Louise Scrivener.
Congratulations.
Katie Shaw.
Congratulations.
Mark Snaith.
Congratulations.
Philip Solarski.
Congratulations.
Nicholas Walker.
Congratulations.
Lucy Wood.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History and Politics, European Union, Juliet Bailey.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History of Art, Kathleen Ashley.
Congratulations.
Anne Carpenter.
Congratulations.
Charles Crisford.
Congratulations.
Holly Frankel.
Congratulations.
Birgitta Hahn Irvoldsen.
Congratulations.
Jane Hatton.
Congratulations.
Rosalind Holton.
Congratulations.
Emma Hyde.
Congratulations.
David Johnson.
Congratulations.
Tessa Macklem.
Congratulations.
Sarah May.
Congratulations.
Kate Melba.
Congratulations.
Emily Peck.
Congratulations.
Andrea Purvis.
Congratulations.
Catherine Richter.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Shaw.
Well done.
Catherine Sutton.
Congratulations.
Anna Turley.
Congratulations.
Catherine Walsh.
Congratulations.
Suzanne Warner.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in History of Art, European Union, Andrea Benn.
Congratulations.
Patrick Freeman.
Congratulations.
Anthony Richards.
Congratulations.
Angela Swan.
Congratulations.
Philippa Wilkins.
Congratulations.
Catherine Young.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Humanities, Elizabeth Brighton.
Congratulations.
Rachel Butler.
Congratulations.
Lily Dunn.
Congratulations.
James Pearson.
Congratulations.
Karen Raitt.
Congratulations.
Peter Ridge.
Congratulations. Well done.
Caroline Wessel.
Congratulations. Well done.
Glenys Wood.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in World Humanities, Julie Hargett.
Congratulations.
Ibrahim Hewitt.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Modern Language Studies, Fabienne Benoist.
Congratulations.
Yvonne Evans.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Arts in Modern Language Studies with a year abroad, Tamasin Adams.
Congratulations.
Sian Bradford.
Congratulations.
Rachel Crook.
Congratulations.
Vicky Cutts.
Congratulations.
Philip Dolby.
Congratulations.
James Dwight.
Congratulations.
Lisa Fraser.
Congratulations.
Esme Ho Ashu.
Congratulations.
Sophie Mortimer.
Congratulations.
David Ryan.
Congratulations.
Carol Salisbury.
Congratulations.
Sarah Toogood.
Congratulations.
Mr. Chancellor, I ask you to admit to the several degrees for which they are presented by my faculty those candidates who are absent.
By the authority of the Senate, I admit those candidates who are absent to the several degrees which they are presented.
The graduands in the Faculty of Education and Continuing Studies will be presented by the Dean, Professor Fogelman. Will all graduands in the faculty please stand?
Mr. Chancellor, I ask you to admit these candidates from the Faculty of Education and Continuing Studies to the several degrees for which they are presented.
Graduates of the Faculty of Education and Continuing Studies, by the authority of the Senate, I admit you to the several degrees which you are presented.
For the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, Norman Dobson.
I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Congratulations.
Jane Doughty.
I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Congratulations.
Linda Merriman.
I admit you to the degree of Doctor of Philosophy.
Dorota Zienski.
I give you the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
For the degree of Doctor of Education, Meryl Atici.
I give you the degree Doctor of Education.
Mark Brandrett.
I give you the degree Doctor of Education.
Abbas Turnaclue.
I give you the degree Doctor of Education.
Elif Turnaclue.
I give you the degree Doctor of Education.
For the degree of Master of Arts in Applied Linguistics and the Teaching of English to Speakers of Other Languages, Mark Baldwin.
Congratulations.
Celia Cliff.
Congratulations.
Lucas Duterakis.
Congratulations.
Christopher Hubbard.
Congratulations.
Annette Kay.
Congratulations very much.
Avanthia Manios.
Congratulations.
Alejandro Parini.
Congratulations.
Silvana Riccio De Bottino.
Congratulations.
Lynn Stevenson.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Master of Arts in Professional Studies and Education, Elaine Banton.
Congratulations very much.
Graham Beck.
Congratulations.
Colin Bowles.
Congratulations.
Helen Coupland-Smith.
Congratulations.
David Freer.
Congratulations.
Terry Hall.
Congratulations.
Janet Samuels.
Congratulations.
Patricia Stringer.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Master of Business Administration in Educational Management, Christine Berridge.
Congratulations.
Susan Breakwell.
Congratulations.
Jennifer Carruthers.
Congratulations.
Julian Clark.
Congratulations.
Rosalind Fell.
Congratulations.
Joe Fenner.
Congratulations.
Joanna Fletcher.
Congratulations.
Colina Garbett.
Congratulations.
Michael Higgins.
Congratulations.
Diane Holden.
Congratulations.
Elizabeth Jones.
Congratulations.
Carol Ketley.
Congratulations.
Matthew Lane.
Congratulations.
Yvette Mayers.
Congratulations.
Maria Maguire.
Congratulations.
Christina McIntosh.
Congratulations.
Marie Quayle.
Congratulations.
Stephen Rayner.
Congratulations.
Jeremy Salisbury.
Congratulations.
Robert Scanlon.
Congratulations.
George Svugaras.
Congratulations.
Paul Shenton.
Congratulations.
Andrew Shepherd.
Congratulations.
Lavinia Saul.
Congratulations.
Sylvia Thomas.
Congratulations.
Julia Weston.
Congratulations.
Christine West Robinson.
Congratulations.
Graham Wilson.
Congratulations.
David Wright.
Congratulations.
Pamela Wright.
Congratulations.
For the degree of Bachelor of Education, University College, Northampton, Rachel Dainty.
Congratulations.
Julie Keenan.
Congratulations.
Zoe Potter.
Congratulations.
Mr. Chancellor, I ask you to admit to the several degrees for which they are presented by my faculty those candidates who are absent.
By the authority of the Senate, I admit those candidates who are absent to the several degrees for which they are presented. Let me begin by congratulating our new honorary graduate. The tradition of awarding honorary degrees to distinguished people from different walks of life is an old one, and it gives, I hope, pleasure both to the donor and to the recipient. By combining the honorary degree ceremony with the usual student graduation, it also highlights, for the benefit of the younger generation, some of the possible careers that they might aspire to. Some of you may even be back here or at another university in several decades' time in a more senior capacity, and at that stage you do not need to pass any further examinations. It is exactly 50 years since I myself went up to university as an undergraduate. And although with advancing years one forgets many things, I still have very vivid memories of my student years. It is a cliché that these are the best years of your life. But in many ways, it is true. These are the years when one establishes one's independence, makes abiding friendships, takes the first steps that will determine one's future. In retrospect, the period at university seems very short, but youth and energy make it a vibrant and rich experience. I hope this has also been the case with most of you, though I realize that times have changed, that many come to university as mature or part-time students. But I'm sure that for all of you, the university experience has been a definitive part of your lives, and we're here today to celebrate your success. Graduation ceremonies are major events for all the participants, and here I include not just the ones who sit process across the stage, but all those in the hall. The family and friends of those graduating will have played an important part over the years by providing support and encouragement. And this graduation is their reward also. And the cheers from the hall at various stages seem to indicate that they have enjoyed the occasion. For the past few years on these occasions, I have inevitably referred to the approach of the 21st century and to the new era that we will be entering. This is now upon us. This is the last summer graduation at Leicester of the 20th century. And although, as a mathematician, I realize that round numbers have only a symbolic significance, it so happens that the world really is undergoing a major transformation that will affect all our lives. If we look backwards and forwards a few years, we can see extremely rapid changes in society. At one level, this is most obvious in this country in the explosive growth of higher education. Over 30% of each age group go on to university, and the numbers look set to grow much further. Education is becoming ever more international. Leicester is a pioneer in this respect, with a large number of students from other countries, many represented here today. The economy, the way we earn our living, has also undergone a revolution. The old big manufacturing industries have disappeared or become automated, while service industries have multiplied. The computer has produced the internet, while the mobile phone and new developments in communication are already having a profound effect on all our lives. Fortunately, the young, that's you, are more adaptable than the old, that's me. I had to struggle to produce this speech on my word processor, having been belatedly brought into the computer age by my children, whereas your generation has no doubt been computerized from the cradle. In addition to the computer revolution, we are witnessing enormous changes in the scientific field, particularly in biology. These will change our lives in ways we can only vaguely foresee, and in your lifetimes, these changes will work themselves out. You will be part of the process. This new future, the third millennium, will require large numbers of scientists of all kinds, not only natural scientists and engineers to develop the science and its applications, but also social scientists to handle the social consequences of these momentous changes. All the disciplines studied at university will, in one way or another, be needed for the future. Most of these changes, both scientific and economic, start first in the United States, then move around the world. Already, many years ago, I recall an American friend of mine of Hungarian origin explaining to me what he liked about America. He said, everything here is now mass-produced and cheap. Cars, washing machine, television sets, and so on. The only thing that is expensive is human labor. Call in the plumber, for example. That is as it should be. And I hope that this is the way of the future for all of us, a world in which human labor is a valued commodity. Unfortunately, this is not the lot of most mankind, and there is a danger that the great changes we are living through will only benefit parts of the world and increase the gap between rich and poor. While Europe, North America, and parts of Asia have prospered, Africa remains a sad continent, with only South Africa beginning to show hope of better times. It will be your generation that will determine the future of the world in the next century. And the increasing mobility of our people and ideas will, I am sure, see many of you working and living in other parts of the world where you can make your mark. You will have an exciting time ahead. Now, so far, I've been addressing those of you who have graduated today, but there is one here among us who has yet to get his degree, and that is, of course, our Vice-Chancellor. He has a degree in the past, but he will get another degree in a few days' time when the university confers on him an honorary degree, and on that occasion, the public orator will expound forth on his contributions to the university. But perhaps today I can say a few words for this audience here. When I became Chancellor of the University of Leicester a few years ago, and my friends discovered that I was also retiring up to Edinburgh, they were a bit mystified. They said, how can you run a university in Leicester when you're living in Edinburgh? Because they hadn't realized the subtleties of the English language and system. The Chancellor is, of course, a figurehead, and the Vice-Chancellor does all the work. So I wanted to make this quite clear, in case any misunderstanding is present. So the Vice-Chancellor of a British university these days is a very onerous, hard task. Some 25 years ago, it might perhaps have been regarded as not quite a sinecure, but a gentlemanly job in your later years. But nowadays, things have changed. Government policy, economic constraints, expanding education make the job of a Vice-Chancellor like the chief executive of a large company, with all the pressures that involves. And during his time here, Dr. Edwards has seen the university expand, as he indicated to you, by large numbers of students, and particularly in areas such as further education, master's degrees, PhDs, and the university has been transformed during his time, and that's a tribute to his contribution. One or two particular things I might mention. In recent years, or very recently, there is a new joint medical degree course being established between this university and the University of Warwick, which will be starting shortly. That's a new venture of an exciting kind involving collaboration between two different institutions. Another example is the new National Space Science Centre, which is coming to Leicester and will include, for example, the new Challenger Centre, where you can take your younger brother or perhaps your children to play around and practice landing on the moon and on Mars, very important things for the future. Well, Dr. Edwards has made many contributions, and I think on behalf of all of you, I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking him personally. I now declare this congregation at an end.